How's it going, everybody? For this week, what I did was I wanted to cover other mobile application frameworks that we had not looked at yet, and I wanted to make sure that I captured everything that was popular right now, everything that there was a lot of traffic about in terms of GitHub. Um, so I looked at a series of different articles, looked online, and tried to gather a list. And I came up with a list of 7 different frameworks. So I figured I'd look at a bit about each one, and then for this week, have you guys check them out. I'm not expecting you're going to install all 7 of them, but take a look at them, read about them a little bit, maybe install 1 or 2. I'd ask you some generic questions about them. This is more like being able to see what's available. Okay, right? If I'm going to go out and decide to use a database system, I'm not going to just go use Microsoft or Oracle or whatever. I'm going to take an honest appraisal at what's available right now at this minute, what looks good for the next 6 months, couple of years, etc. Just so that my opinions, my information is fresh, correct, and B, so I understand that I'm not doing something the hard way if there's a new framework that does things easier. There's, in many cases, a lot of these do things very simple. Looks at Xamarin that Microsoft has set up. They've made it very easy to develop applications. PhoneGap is easy. The Corona SDK is easy. The JQuery, almost everyone, they're really simple to work with. A lot easier than like Android and Java, Kotlin style, to be honest. Kotlin has helped. Don't get me wrong there, but like traditional Android and Java with like the GeoQuiz, you end up with a lot of XML, a lot of code to do not a lot of stuff really. You're just cycling through like 5 questions, right? So some of these other frameworks will make that easier. So the first one is JQuery Mobile. So JQuery, as we might know, is a very common web library. So like almost any website that you're going to make that uses any kind of framework probably has jQuery as a base for it. So I click on these paragraphs, these p tags. This p tag has an event tied to it. This is the basis of jQuery. So I can say $ some document ID, element ID. In this case, under the document itself, when the document is ready, if there's a P in there, add to the click event for the P height itself. So when I run this, if I click on P's, it hides them. So this general format is how all jQuery is basically done, whether it's AJAX, calls, etc. Promises, that kind of stuff. Very easy to add more events to the end of stuff. So that simplifies if-then type programming and promise type programming in JavaScript. So jQuery Mobile. So instead of using the downloaded version from here, I added a link to the GitHub version. This is better. This has a demo with it. So if I hit clone or download, open in GitHub desktop, I'm going to clone jQuery Mobile. The download from the homepage just has the actual complete jQuery Mobile itself, which is good. That's what you would use like in production or whatever. But this has some demos with it. And I forgot about that. This is better to look at because this actually has stuff that you can see beyond just the looking at the JavaScript itself. So the idea here is we're getting this demos directory, and in here there's all kinds of different UI elements. Okay, so this is what you really want because this allows you to see both the jQuery JavaScript itself and a bunch of demos on how to use it. So that is what you really want there. For Ionic, this is probably one of the largest in terms of becoming an enterprise application. I think they're selling a good amount. This has become popular. So there's some really simple ways that you can create an application. Yeah, we'll pick tabs with React. Sure. I'll make a new profile. I don't think I have one under my Pit account. And we will use that. So this is really the advantage of using Ionic framework. So then once I've done that, let's say I go here, I'm going to go open a folder, and we'll make a new folder, Ionic example. Then I'm running these two commands that they gave me. So after I run this wizard, Ionic's CLI, its command line interface, hooks me up similar to Expose in React Native, hooks me up to their server, gets the application that I made, a little bit of waiting, but only two commands so far. So after those two commands, Ionic builds my new project, tells me to change directory into it and run Ionic serve. And here's my new project, my 3 different tabs. I can see the source code here and edit it. This is like a series of widgets similar to React Native. Pretty freaking easy, right? So I would get hot reload, all that kind of stuff. Here's my Ionic hub with my apps that I can manage through here too. If I get heavy into this, I could purchase subscriptions. I can also, but for free, I can run Capacitor to do native iOS or Android, icons, splash screens, all that stuff. So super cool, similar to React Native, super easy to set up. So that's Ionic. Next is Swift. So Swift is Apple and an open source programming language with Xcode as a front end, but also some other development pieces that allow you to use it in Linux and Windows. So first thing right off the bat, if you're interested in this, step number 1, the best thing to do is have a Mac and do something with Xcode or Swift Playgrounds, that kind of thing. Alright, so if you do not have a Mac, you can still use Swift and run it using Windows Subsystem for Linux. So what you can do is, and I set this machine up to do this, I can run this command in PowerShell. So I open up PowerShell as an administrator, and I run this command to install the subsystem. I won't do it because it's already been installed. Then after that, this is a very easy process to get Linux running on Windows now, and you can actually run graphical GUI applications in Windows. So after you do that, this is my favorite part, then you go to the Microsoft Store and search for Linux, and then you can pick Ubuntu, Kali Linux if you'd like to install that on Windows. These will work, and not only will they work SUSE Enterprise Linux, you can do everything. As a matter of fact, here is Crusader. This is X Windows application. This is running in using KDE, running directly in Windows. Okay, using this method. So you run that PowerShell command, then you install whichever distribution you want, and then this article shows you how to run the graphical Linux desktop applications. So this is really only 2 steps. You install an X server, this Xming. I have a link to this in the listing, and it's in here. This is what I have running here so that I can run this. You install that, and then you tell your bash RC to export what display to use, that environment variable, then you can install stuff. That's it. That's really all I had to do. And now I have full graphical KDE applications right in Windows itself. I can run Swift editors and do all that kind of stuff. There's a couple of different UIs. This one is super cool. IBM, let me close these guys up. IBM built this front end for Swift called Katura. It's a web framework and HTTP server. Again, very easy to install. A couple lines, just like with I won't go through and do every single one of these, but something cool to check out. Okay, another one cool to check out. Xamarin, another super easy install. If you want to use this, all you really have to do is add mobile development with .NET to your Visual Studio install. So if I go to my control panel, right, and then I go to my programs and features, I've got my Visual Studio installer. This manages my Visual Studio 2017, 19, other versions, etc. Then I can modify in here. This is where I specify the packages, right? So I've got Node.js, I've got a bunch. This is the one I need, the mobile development with .NET. I already have it installed here. So once you do that, and we already have all that stuff set up. So in Visual Studio 2019, once that package is added, when I create a new project, let's pick, if we pick Android for instance, that'll get, something to give us mobile type. I think under project types we can pick mobile too. I think that's how they direct us. Yeah, select mobile from the project type drop down. Then Xamarin Forms should be an option. We hit next. They say, let's call it awesome app. And then they want you to choose different types. There's master detail, there's tabbed, and there's blank. They have you choose the blank template just to get a hello world started. And this is good, you could pick the tabbed one also, but I'll pick this one just to show you how easy it is to do this too. Again, this is another good option. I don't see a lot of people using it, but that could just be they may not always be that way. They've made it a lot easier to use. Here's my main page. Welcome to Xamarin Forms. I can start this and debug it. Let's see if we can get this to pop up. Let's see if that's finished in the meantime. There's our demos. So this is again is our jQuery Mobile. This has a series of demos. I have to set up PHP on this machine. Probably be able to run these guys. But yeah, let's see. Yeah, we probably would have to. Let's see. Yeah, this one's 15%. Alright, so this is our jQuery example. I had to install this PHP server extension. Then I could right click on the PHP scripts and serve that project, and I can see all my examples here, different types of forms, field containers, how those work, view the source of them. Pretty cool stuff. So that was our jQuery mobile examples. You can use that to develop applications using jQuery and jQuery mobile. All kinds of different demos of different kinds of application, user interface pieces, Google Maps as an example, widgets for different parts of the user interface elements, like here's an accordion for UI items. All that stuff runs fast, and like jQuery is simple code, easy to use. That was our first one. Ionic, that's our second one. Once that starts, this starts our Ionic app here. We saw that before for a second. There's our tabs, and our user interface has a set of CSS and Ionic components as the front end. So similar to React Native, you can use Ionic Serve to run in a web browser. You can use the Ionic capacitor to add Android or iOS also. So similar to how React and the Expo client worked, relatively easy to use. Then we had Swift, that was to either run on Mac or Windows Subsystem for Linux. Xamarin was our next one. That was here that I had to install or wait for the Android emulator to download. But again, another simple XML based layout, kind of like something that you would do in classic Android and Java applications, but simple to use, simple to work with. Let's see, it looks like it's building right now. I've got a series of methods that are the life cycle of the Xamarin application: on start, on sleep, on resume. Similar kind of set to what I would use in the Android lifecycle in Android Studio. All these frameworks are going to have events like that tied to to use. A lot of this really is, looks like this is still building, but a lot of this really is your choice in terms of which one you like. I suggest you download a few of them, check them out. You can always uninstall them afterwards. They're all free to check out. They all just take 10 or 15 minutes to set up a piece. They give you some hello world applications, something to work with, so you can at least see how it works. So while that one's opening up, Adobe PhoneGap, that uses Apache Cordova. This desktop application for PhoneGap, I've been having some issues with getting this to work, and this really is just a modified version again of how Apache Cordova works. Apache Cordova allows you to use a toolkit to create an application and run an emulated version of that application in a very similar way. As a matter of fact, I'll add this to the PhoneGap install link, because you could do this, run this series of commands just like Expo, right? Works the same way, just like Ionic's toolkit works the same way. 3 or 4 commands, make an example project, run the emulator. You can use that. PhoneGap, though, one of the advantages of why you would use PhoneGap is you can build that package and run all this stuff in the cloud and support all the compilations of different targets there, instead of having to set up your machine and doing all that locally. And then you got to make packages for, let's say that you want to target iOS and Android, Windows Phone, or I don't know why you'd want to do Windows Phone, but multiple platforms, multiple people are working on the application, and we need to get builds out to testers and all this stuff. All these toolkits that I'm showing you, I can set these up myself relatively quickly. In a few minutes, I could build applications, right? But what if I have to have groups working together? So that's where something like PhoneGap would come in. Instead of me just running these toolkits on my machine, maybe I'm going to run some stuff here, somebody else, there's going to be groups testing somewhere else, other groups developing in other places. You can all use PhoneGap to get that together online, basically. This Corona Labs Corona SDK, this one is another cool example. I've downloaded this, installed this on my machine, and they had a simple Flappy Bird example that they linked to in GitHub. I put a link to that in the list of content also, and this is a really cool example also. Let's see, I think yeah, that's right, the Corona simulator. When you install this, I can open the project in code, but the Corona simulator allows me to open it up, edit it, and run it. I'm not very good at Flappy Bird. Hold on, let me try. Oh, man. Too tough for me, man. But I can use VS Code to edit this code. Alright, here's my Lua main script for basically the entire Flappy Bird game itself. Bunch of variables to define it. I'm loading in sounds, getting stuff set up, the score, that kind of thing. Then the bird itself is a PNG that I load on screen in a certain position. I initialize the game. I initialize putting in some pipes, that kind of thing. This is a good example to at least look at. Is another option. This Corona setup is a different one. It's again for 2D game and mobile app development. Similar kind of idea. Uses Lua. Maybe you'd like that instead of running something that uses JavaScript. There's our probably running too many emulators at once. So my this is running an old school Android Studio one for Xamarin, because I had Hyper-V running too. But the Corona Labs one would be a good one to use, possibly if you're interested in Lua, or it's just another example. There's a lot of examples out there. There's a lot of people that seem to be using it, so that one's pretty cool in terms of support. The code, Lua is relatively easy to look at, relatively easy to work with. So not bad stuff. Good to check out. And then this mobile Angular is another one. This is cool, I think, because Bootstrap and Angular is very popular. There's a nice demo so you can see how things work here right in the UI. If you download it, this is just something like jQuery Mobile, another kind of user interface, component framework. All of them relatively good in terms of speed and so on. I think mostly, probably the biggest thing is to look through the set, check the set of them out, see if there's one that looks better to you. Like, as you can see, I set up I think 5 out of the 7 in probably a total of 20 minutes. Most of them are 1 or 2 commands to get started. I think most of it ends up being what kind of code that you like to write, or the code that you like to work with. There's some more details here on Swift, on Linux, and Mac OS if you're interested in that, and then references for where I got the top list of frameworks for. So take a look at those. Check them out. Let me know if you have any questions or any issues with setting anything up that you want to set up, or post that in the discussion boards, and then we'll see you next week.